myself as much time as I may consume.
The gentlelady is recognized for as much time as she wishes to use.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. H.R. 907 before us is a simple, straightforward, common-sense bill that not only helps secure U.S. national security interests, but also the security interests of one of our closest allies in the Middle East, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. This bill will give Jordan the ability to buy defense articles, defense services, and major defense equipment under the Arms Export Control Act, as long as any sale is fully consistent with the United States security and foreign policy interests and objectives. The bill also supports the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan in its response to the Syrian refugee crisis to help alleviate the domestic burden to provide basic needs for the assimilated Syrian refugees, and the bill also calls for greater cooperation with Jordan to fight the terrorist threat from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL, or any other terrorist organization. Late last year, Mr. Speaker, I introduced this bill after leading a congressional delegation to Jordan. We traveled to Jordan to see how the people of Jordan were dealing with the strains put on them from the humanitarian crisis developing in Syria. The King of Jordan had taken in somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 million refugees, despite the toll that this has taken on his country's infrastructure and resources. But despite the added pressures that the kingdom was facing from the refugee crisis, the king told us that one of the most pressing issues that he was facing was the encroachment of ISIL toward its borders. He stressed that he was willing to help lead the fight against ISIL, but just did not have the sufficient military equipment with which to do so. I understand how important the stability and security of Jordan is, and not just for the region, but also for another strong ally of ours, the democratic Jewish state of Israel. So it made sense that in order to maintain the fragile stability in some of the countries in the region, we would need to help bolster the capabilities of our friends who are committed to defeating this radical extremist threat. We marked up the bill in November of last year, but we simply ran out of time at the end of the Congress. So I reintroduced the bill again this year alongside Mr. Ted Deutsch of Florida, the ranking member of the Middle East and North Africa Subcommittee, Kay Granger, the chairman of the State Foreign Ops Appropriations Subcommittee, and Nita Lowy, the ranking member of the same subcommittee, State Foreign Ops Appropriations Subcommittee. And I thank Chairman Royce and Ranking Member Engel, because it is through their leadership that we were able to pass the bill out of our Foreign Affairs Committee unanimously this past April. Mr. Speaker, in Jordan, the U.S. could not ask for a more committed partner in the fight against ISIL. King Abdullah is committed to that fight. He understands the urgency. He understands the need to address ISIL head-on, and he has shown that he is willing to take the necessary measures to defeat these extremists. But he needs more resources to fight ISIL, and he needs these resources to protect the security of his people. Congress must do everything that we can to help our friends defend themselves and defeat this scourge of terror. I urge my colleagues to support this important bill, and with that, Mr. Speaker.
Remainder of the time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I thank my good friend, the gentleman from Virginia, for his comments, and I know that it comes from great experience, and I believe that he also served as a staff member on the Foreign Relations Committee in the Senate, and that has definitely helped to form his opinions and expertise.
If my friend
gentlemen,
would yield.
I would love to yield.
I'm just amazed that my friend from Florida would be in possession of such intricate knowledge, and I thank her for acknowledging.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Connolly, and continuing with my time. This bill could not come at a more important time, Mr. Speaker. In March, I was honored to join Speaker Boehner on a congressional trip to Jordan in order to discuss the growing threat to that region. I had previously gone there on my own CODEL, and now going back in March, I would see how much ISIL has created an even greater threat to the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and the refugee crisis continued to build up for the Kingdom of Jordan. And we expressed our appreciation to His Majesty for his steadfast commitment to support his efforts to fight this ISIL threat and help him with the burden of the refugees. And the King reiterated again his commitment to defeating ISIL and the need for more assistance from the international community. And we told him that we would do what we could to ensure that he had all of the tools needed to win this fight against ISIL. And since the coalition campaign against ISIL began, Mr. Speaker, the terror group has made great gains in Iraq and in Syria. It has expanded its influence across the globe to places like Libya, Tunisia, to Sinai, Europe, and even here in the United States. So Congress needs to do our part. We need to step up. We need to show our allies that we are committed to help them. They are taking the fight to ISIL. Let's help them with these tools. We need to show ISIL and all of our enemies that we will stand by our allies. We will stand by our friends and help them do what is necessary, all that is necessary to defeat terror and to defeat radical extremism. So I urge my colleagues to support this vitally important bill, support our key ally, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and I'd like to thank Mr. Royce and Mr. Engel again for their leadership, as well as Mr. Deutsch, Ms. Granger, and Ms. Lowy. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of our time.